welcome back to Simply Mastering. Today, for episode 4, we've got a little bit of a treat for you, and what I mean by that is that we are breaking the mold in terms of the plugins that we're going to be using on this particular track. What I have loaded up here, and I'll go through this in some detail later, is basically just the 2 meters that we had from the last episode. First is the one that comes with Studio One. Sensitivity's all the way down. Scale is 6. And over here we have the VUMT from Klanghelm, calibrated to -10. And what we're going to be using primarily is this guy right here, the Lurssen Mastering Console by IK Multimedia. I've used this for a pretty big project in the past, and I had really good results with it. And I've been working primarily with free plugins up till now, but today I've decided that we're going to just go ahead and use this and do a little bit of a special edition upon request. So one of the things I want to point out about this plugin is that it sounds really good. It's definitely worth having if you do this a lot, if you do a lot of mastering, and they've even got some really innovative payment plans. If you could practically just rent the thing for a day or so, I think, if all you need is to do 1 or 2 tracks. But basically, it's an all-in-one solution, and it does a fairly effective job. I think it's limited, and what I mean by that is that the equalizer has 5 fixed bands. It does have some other settings that you can adjust, but aside from that, it does have its limitations. Now, one of the things that it has these limitations for is to keep you from getting too overwhelmed with settings and so on and whatnot. But for those of us that already know what we're doing, this can be a very simple way of just getting to a finalized product, or even a way of previewing what a real master will sound like. So, in that it is restricted in that way, I have employed the use of another equalizer here at the front of my chain. This is Acoustica Audio's free plugin called Ochre. It's a 3-band, basically broadband equalizer with a customized preamp. And we're going to be using it in front of the LMC here to help us sculpt that equalization curve a little bit, because as I said before, these are 5 fixed bands, and there isn't really much we can do if the frequency we want to adjust is not in this range. Now, they're strategically placed to provide a very full, well-rounded adjustment. But what do you do if you want to make an adjustment at 800 hertz or something like that, which is in between these two? Well, you need something else, which is why we're going to be employing the use of this guy. Now, we may or may not actually need to do that. So what we need to do first is go ahead and listen to the mix. But I want to make sure that I have that extra equalizer to help me if I need more control than the LMC is going to give me. So what I want to do is listen to the mix first, get an idea for it, and we'll go from there. This is a mix called Girl in the Window by Chris Dickens, and he's been gracious enough to allow me to use this for the program. So let's get started and listen to the mix.
Of her toes, with a filthy little she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone? The girl in the window. So very long. Will anyone? Left to the right. She never heard before the girl is long gone. Without a parent's love, she became fairly wild. Lord, will anyone ever come to rescue this child? Why must she suffer for so very long?
Okay, one of the first things that sticks out to me is the guitars are really, there's a lot of energy around 2K, maybe 3K, in that crucial range that they tend to sound a little harsh if they're not controlled properly. They're just a little on the bright side here in this particular mix. Another thing I want to do is, I like where the bass is. I think that it's in a good spot, but I really think we need some more mid-range, lower mid-range maybe. And we need to lift those highs up a little bit. Possibly even scoop that 3K region down to keep those guitars from sounding too harsh. Now, one of the things that I really like about this plugin is that the farther you push it, the harder you push it, the more it tends to saturate the mid-range and it gets warmer. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn it on, and we're just going to leave it like it is at this default state and play the mix and see what we have.
The neighbors never knew that a mama had a kid. Like a prisoner, her mama kicked her head. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone? The girl in the window. When mama left for work, she left the child alone on a tattered mattress, no toys of her own. Diapers were tossed in piles round the room. The roaches were drawn like guns to cheap perfume. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is
All right, I went ahead and toyed around with some of the presets here. I think this one fits the track the best. I'm really not going to bother going through hip-hop, EDM, Americana, or whatever for the sake of this tutorial. I'm going to keep it simple and use one of the pop rock ones, and one I think sounds the best is this one here with more glue. It still needs a little bit of work. We're missing some mid-range, and I know that it's in between 120 and 3K. So we'll probably use the ochre for that, but what we can do is start to play around with what we do have and try to keep the use of any other plugins to a minimum. So what I want to do, first of all, is drive the input up until I reach my goal here of 0 on this meter, or in other words, negative 10 dB full scale.
Tips of her toes was a filthy little girl who's only 4 years old. The neighbors never knew that her mama had a kid. Like a prisoner, her mama kept her hid. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone?
It's holding up pretty well, I think. Even being pushed past, 0 here, I would say that that's going up to about negative 9 dB full scale, which in this case I think is okay, because the mix really is holding up. I think it's holding up pretty well, but we still need to go through here and adjust our equalizer. So that's what I'm going to do next.
Curtains on the tips of her toes was a filthy little girl who's only 4 years old. The neighbors never knew that her mama had a kid. Like a prisoner, her mama kept her hid. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone? The girl in the window. When mama left for work, she left the child alone on a tattered mat.
Alright, we're getting there. I think this is better. Now, what I want to do is take a pass at the controls up here, controlling the threshold of the compressor, the threshold of the de-esser, and the makeup gain. Now, what the makeup gain is, this is a control that shoves the final signal up into the brick wall limiter at the end of the plug-in chain. We don't really want to hit it too hard because that'll flatten out the mix. So now that I've turned this down, I'm going to turn this up a little bit to compensate.
Peeping through the curtains on the tips of her toes was a filthy little girl who's only 4 years old. The neighbors never knew that her mama had a kid. Like a prisoner, her mama kept her hid. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone? The girl in the window. When mama left for work, she left the child alone on a tattered mattress, no toys of her.
So what I've accomplished by doing that is that I've backed off on the final brick wall limiter, so I'm not shoving those transients down so hard. And by pushing this up, by driving the chain more, I've actually managed to warm up the track some more. So by playing a little give and take between these two parameters, you can essentially control how dynamic your mix is and the response of the dynamics throughout the chain. And I think that I like having this turned up a little bit more and having this turned down, because it leaves more transient detail to my ears. All right, so the next thing I want to do is pull up ochre and just fill in a little bit of the gaps where the EQ is concerned, because right now I think that it sounds good, but I think it could sound even better. If I push this up, I'm making the track brighter, but I can accomplish the same thing here with ochre's high band. Let me go ahead and turn all these bands on. Now what I want to do is brighten up the track. So instead of turning this up, I'm going to turn it up here, and I'm going to sort of go back and forth between the two of them and see which one of the highs I actually like better.
Diapers were tossed in piles round the room. The roaches were drawn like drums to cheap perfume. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone?
Obviously, the difference between these two is that this is not a shelf. This is a bell. This is a shelf. So we've got two different flavors. So what I might actually do is use a little bit of both, because I think that it's good to have that shelf a little higher. Who knows? Maybe once I fiddle around with the lows a little bit, I'll end up changing that. But for now, I'm going to leave it right here and start to go down and work on this mid-range.
Peeping through the curtains on the tips of her toes was a filthy little girl who's only 4 years old. The neighbors never knew that her mama had a kid. Like a prisoner, her mama kept her hid. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone? The girl in the window. When mama left for work, she left the child alone on a tattered mattress, no toys of her own. Diapers were tossed in piles round the room. The roaches.
This plugin sounds really good. You know, it's just one of those. Acoustica is just one of those companies I don't think enough people know about them. But this plugin is free. I may end up using this again some more in future episodes, but it sounds really good. Now, we're going to go down to the lows. And well, actually, before I do that, one of the things I forgot to mention was this input trim. Now, something that we need to be sure of when we're using these Aqua plugins is that we have the correct level going into them. And one of the reasons why I think a lot of people don't understand these things is because they are not algorithmic. These are actually based on samples and, you know, kind of like an IR, except that it's not sampled by a room. It's actually sampled by hardware, or samples of a hardware unit. So if you are to drive the input past the level of the sampled unit, or I should say, if your input level is greater than the highest level sampled of the unit. It's a little confusing, but if that makes any sense at all, it'll basically just squawk at you because you've overdriven it. So you have to make sure that your gain staging is correct, and input level needs to be optimal, and optimal is about negative 18 dBFS. So what we look at when we set the input trim is this meter over here. Ogre's meter is actually pretty accurate. You can't say that about all of the Aqua plugins, but what we can be sure of is that the plugin isn't clipping at this level, and we can actually push it up a little bit further towards the 0 if we want to saturate it a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and do that and then work on the low end.
Tips of her toes was a filthy little girl who's only 4 years old. The neighbors never knew that her mama had a kid. Like a prisoner, her mama kept her hid. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone? Child alone on a tattered mattress, no toys of her own. Diapers were tossed in piles round the room. The roaches were drawn like guns to cheap perfume. Why must she suffer for so very long? Will anyone see her before the girl in the window is gone?
Obviously now adjusting the input, the bands of the Ochre EQ, we've given it a little bit more level here. So I just backed that down a little bit because I don't want to I want to make sure that I'm not pushing too hard, so somewhere in here is fine. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there for the purposes of this video, but you can see how quickly and rather easily I was able to dial that in, and I think what we have here is a pretty good sounding master. Now you could probably do better than this on your own if you have your own chain, but for a quick and easy solution, this really works pretty well, and I'm hoping that I get a chance to do another one of these before too long. I encourage you to download this mix, plug it into your session, and if you have the Lurssen console and the Ochre EQ, Ochre's free, so you really should have no reason not to have that. But if you happen to have the Lurssen console, or if you want to try out the demo, go ahead and play with it. Dial in the settings I have here, and you'll end up with the result that we currently have here. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close it out as the song plays. So again, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and happy mastering.
Of her toes was a filthy she suffered for so very long.